Dear members and esteemed audience, welcome to the first annual lecture of Journal of Asian Art, Culture and Literature JAACL, organized in collaboration with Asian Literary Society. Asian Literary Society is a community dedicated to promoting Asian art, culture and literature. Apart from sharing information on our rich cultural heritage, we intend to serve society as a whole through our programs and initiatives. As you all know, our vision is to promote Asian art, culture, and literature all over the world, and our mission has been sharing relevant information about Asian literature to all, broaden the knowledge base, and hone the writing skills of our members, serve humanity through our creativity, social initiatives, and programs, and honor literary luminaries and artists for their invaluable contribution in the field of art, culture, and literature. So in 2010, ALS has witnessed a lot of accomplishments that include we started 2D groups dedicated to art and culture, ALS Arts and Craft Group, ALS Performing Arts Group. We started a journal for Asian art, culture and literature, JAACL, which is a quarterly journal. We organized our first ALS art exhibition at CSOI, where various Asian art styles have been displayed. We organized ALS Litfest 2020 at Delnet. We presented ALS Women Achievers Award. We had our first Mehfil Sukhan and Urdu program. We did our 9 days celebration of arts, culture and literature through Navras 2020. We had organized Jashn Azadi 2020 celebrating India's Independence Day, and we had third ALS Literary Conference 2020 in October, and very recently we had Bhasha 2020 Assamese chapter. Along with this, we presented Wordsmith Award for Poetry and Short Stories. We presented Sagar Memorial Award for Children Literature. We had Gitesh Biwa Memorial Award on Women's Issues and Annual Photography Contest Awards. Along with this, we had a lot of challenges during lockdown, which include poetry and prose challenges and online art exhibitions. Apart from these contests, we have been successfully conducting since last 3 years weekly poetry contest, fortnightly Spirit of Asia contest for poetry in prose in English, Hindi poetry contest, and caption contest in English. I'm very glad that because of all these initiatives, ALS has now reached to more than 100 countries with thousands of members all over the world. Coming to the Journal of Asian Art, Culture and Literature, we started it this year, and its fourth issue will be available for readers next week. Journal of Asian Art, Culture and Literature has been started with the aim of promoting the Asian art, culture and literature. This journal provides a platform where scholars, academicians, professionals can share their profound knowledge on Asia, its countries, and their rich heritage. Dear friends, I would like to thank all the editorial team members, which comprise Dr. Swasti Dhar, Dr. Aparna Bagwe, Dr. Vikshaka Sharma, Santini Govindan, Beena Pillai, Sanjula Sharma, and Kalyani Menon for their support for JAACL and its innovative endeavors. Dear friends, our guest speaker of today's lecture is Dr. A.J. Thomas. So I would like to tell in brief about Dr. A.J. Thomas. Dr. A.J. Thomas is an eminent Indian poet and writer. He is an acclaimed translator of poetry, fiction, drama, and non-fiction prose from his mother tongue Malayalam. He was the editor of Indian Literature, the bi-monthly English journal of Sahitya Akademi, that is India's National Academy of Letters. Dr. A.J. Thomas is the recipient of Katha Award, AKMG Prize, and prestigious Vodafone Crossword Award for translating M. Mukundan's Keswante Vilam Pangal, Keshwan's Lamentation 2007. Dr. A.J. Thomas was born in Kerala in the foothills of Western Ghats Sahyadri in the valley of Mount Ellican. For the first 10 years of his life, he lived in the hill hamlet Mekhal. When he moved from Wayanad in 1976 to work with Kerala Tourism Development Corporation, he had an opportunity to see international acclaimed writers like Dominic Lapierre, Sir Angus Wilson, Salman Rushdie, and Indian writers like Pritish Nandi, M.T. Vasudevan Nair, and others who inspired him. Dr. A.J. Thomas writes poetry in English regularly. His work has appeared in prestigious poetry anthologies like The Dance of the Peacock, an anthology of English poetry from India featuring 151 Indian poets, edited by Vivekanand Jha and published by Hidden Brook Press, Canada. Dr. A.J. Thomas will be speaking today on the topic Challenges and Opportunities for Asian Literature in Years to Come. I hope Dr. A.J. Thomas sir will share his experience for editing the National Literary Journal Indian Literature of Sahitya Academy that helped him to develop a mental picture of a mental map of literature from 24 national languages of India. Being a core committee member of Sarc Literature Associations and honorary fellow of South Korea's Department of Culture, Dr. A.J. Thomas has been familiar with the challenges faced by Asian literature on global platform. I hope he will be discussing about it in this annual lecture. Along with it, Dr. A.J. Thomas will speak about international and national seminars organized by Sahitya Academy and other agencies over the quarter century, the International Writing Program and Annual Conference of American Writers Federation at Washington, D.C. He will also share his experience of meeting with writers, intellectuals, and professionals of the expat community in USA, UK, and Europe that helped him to gauge the potential appeal of Asian literature in the West. So, without taking more time, I welcome Sir and I now request Sir to please address the listening audience.
Thank you, Manoj, and thank you all who are listening to me right now. I had found this platform reading my poems earlier, and I thank Manoj for giving me new attention. And yeah, until a few days ago, I was editing Indian literature. Even now, this is the last November, December issue, which I am editing. Just a few more days left. I've been editing this journal off and on for the last 23 and a half years in various capacities. As assistant editor first, then as editor. Then when I went to Libya on lien and subsequently took voluntary retirement. Then there was a revolution in Libya. I came back during the revolution and became the guest editor, again editing Indian literature. Then I went back to Libya after the revolution, and I edited Indian literature from there through emails for 2 years. Then I came back from Libya for good. Then after a year's gap, I resumed that Indian literature again, and for the last 4.5 years, I have been editing this journal. I will tell you more about this journal later on in the course of my lecture. So this is how it is, and I am sure that there will be more friends of mine listening to me, and with whom I want to share firsthand my experiences. I'm not going to talk to you academically or taking theory into my hands and analyze, nothing like that. It's just as I experienced what is Asia's literature and how we are going to go about it, how we are going to go ahead in the world with literature from our continent. So I'll begin this lecture, which we have captioned Challenges and Opportunities for Asian Literature in Years to Come. Years to come, years without end. Let's hope. Let's see how the world is shaping up after the pandemic or in spite of it. Yeah, it is quite a wonderful kind of time if you take it in that way, because so many beloved writers like Mangalesh because of, and itself things are becoming worse and worse. How wearing a mask or washing their hands or using the sanitizer or keeping the distance. So it is I'm dwelling on. You don't really care whether you die or not. It's like kind of bravado, but it's sad and tragic. That's also the silver lining. This is, you can't go on dreading. You can't go on fearing. What may they will make care. This is the only way you can go ahead of. So it is either way. It's not definitely how you react to the situation. This is how we are seeing people reacting, not only in Delhi, all the country. Only perhaps in Kerala, where I am here right now, that we. Kind of life, but we are safer. If we contact this, so it is a mixed bag. So when we about Asian we have to take a sort of
Sir, there is some network problem. It seems we are not able to hear.
Okay.
You can just move your mobile a bit so that the signal comes. Your voice is breaking actually.
No, I'm using it. I'm using the recorder.
No, it's fine. Your voice is coming.
No?
Yeah, it's coming now. Your voice. We are able to hear you. Yes, sir, we are able to hear you.
So without this earphone, I'll be talking. So if you
Okay,
can't
sir.
hear, you interrupt me. Okay.
Okay,
Tell
sir.
me
Now
that you can't hear. When you
sure,
don't
sure.
hear.
Okay, sir.
Hello, can you hear me? You are not
Yes,
visible,
sir.
but you can hear me. Okay.
Yes,
So
sir.
I begin my story. I had said that it is not a theory or academic discourse that I'm making. It is I'm sharing my experiences with you, and in the process of that, this subject matter emerges from that. That's the way I'm going to do it. So it was the summer of 1997. I had won the first prize in an international literary translation competition, for which I had translated the celebrated Malayalam fiction writer Sethu's story Doodh, or The Mission. The US-based organizers of the competition had invited me to take part in an international writing program in Writers Center, Bethesda, Maryland, and also the annual conference of the American Writers Federations in Washington, D.C. during March-April 1997. It was a round-trip ticket which I planned to use for a 4-month tour of the USA, UK, and Europe. There is a background to this. During the period 1990-91, I had enrolled myself in the first batch of MPhil scholars in the School of Letters, an interdisciplinary center of excellence under Mahatma Gandhi University, Kottayam, Kerala, which Professor U.R. Anandamurthy, as Vice Chancellor, had set up modeled on a US University School of Letters. I was able to specialize in literary translation for the MPhil course and offer a dissertation of actual translation of 17 Malayalam stories with an introductory study. That was something very fresh, very revolutionary idea at that time. I had got in touch with Paul Zakaria, the leading Malayalam fiction writer of the time, as a translation of his story, Annamma Teacher, a memoir, also was included in my dissertation. This contact developed into a friendship between the two of us, and in time, I translated almost half the stories of his first book of stories in English translation titled Bhaskara Patelar and Other Stories, which Manas, an imprint of affiliated East West Chennai, now called Westland, brought out as their first book in 1993. The stories received rave reviews, including one in the Times Literary Supplement. Next, I had translated Paul Zakaria's story Salam America in 1993, which had won the Katha Award. I had also enrolled my for my PhD in the same School of Letters, choosing literary translation for my thesis. It was with this background that I began my USA, UK, Europe tour that lasted 4 months from March to July 1997. Confident of promoting my book, which even the Times Literary Supplement had favorably reviewed, I first attended the International Writing Program at Bethesda, Maryland, where writers and translators from different parts of the world had gathered for a 1-month workshop to hone their skills. The first thing that astonished me was that the English that I wrote till then was hardly understood by the writers who were participating in the program. The Indian variety of the English language, loaded with Indian culture-specific concepts and usages, would not communicate to an international audience. The story which had won me the international prize, was analyzed in detail by the participants. The prevalence of the passive voice, phrases like housing colony, which would not mean anything to them unless described as the neighborhood, made me humbler. Further, when I participated in the 3-day annual conference of the Writers Federations of America in the Radisson's International Hotel in Washington, D.C., where I carried copies of Bhaskara Patlayer and other stories and distributed copies of the review of this book in the TLS, it was confirmed that this book or this kind of literature meant nothing to the Americans. Even British literature or the TLS were alien to them. My hopes of promoting Indian literature in English translation in the USA took a further beating when the Indian Expatriates Associations of several major US cities showed a lukewarm or even a lethargic response to my enthusiastic reading tours. After my 2 months of the tour of the US cities from March to May 1997, I flew to London. There I made a point of meeting the office bearers of the Art Council. I met Ranjana Sudhanda Ash, literary scholar of Indian origin, who stood in for the secretary of the Art Council to meet me. When I showed her my book and the TLS review, her first reaction was how I had managed the review. When I said it had just appeared like that, she said that it was impossible unless someone had pushed hard for it. She said it was very rare for any book, unless it was published in England or the US, to get reviewed in TLS. And that even if it did get a review in TLS, it would not help in its acceptance in the UK. You must remember that Arundhati Roy was giving readings of her God of Small Things at India House and signing her books in Trafalgar Square on the same day. This was well before her sensational Booker win, which was 3 months into the future. Salman Rushdie's Midnight Children was already a classic, and Amitav Ghosh's first few books had already been out. Pankaj Mishra was in the making. However, a translation of fiction, I repeat, a translation of fiction from Indian languages was not even to be considered as literature in the UK, in spite of getting a splendid review in the TLS. Now we have to consider the term Asian literature. For our purposes, we consider it as literatures produced in the continent of Asia. But in the US or Western academia, the term Asian literature is almost synonymous with Chinese literature and Japanese literature, although officially the area mainly includes East Asia, South Asia, and Southeast Asia. It is a fact that there is already considerable reach enjoyed by Chinese literature, especially from Taiwan and Hong Kong after the formation of the People's Republic, and Japanese literature, especially the post-World War II literature and the ancient classical literary forms. Asian American literature is a genre created by immigrants from China and Japan in the US. Similarly, we have Indian American writing by celebrated writers like Jhumpa Lahiri, Chitrabha Banerjee Divakaruni, Bharati Mukherjee, Meena Alexander, and scores of others. Would these immigrant writers who share our cultural ethos act as catalysts in promoting Asian literature in the West? To what extent are they identified as ethnic Asians? Aren't they already part of the American melting pot of multiculturalism, which seeks to forge one nation from many cultures, all of whom are immigrants, like the ingredients of a fantastic soup? What happens to Indian literature books in international book fairs like Frankfurt, London, Beijing, etc.? Again, lack of written translations is considered a significant handicap. However, this handicap is being addressed in a conspicuous manner, as is evidenced by DSC awards and JCB awards, both internationally prestigious awards, going to Indians in recent years.
Sahitya Akademi had constituted a body named Indian Literature Abroad as an initiative taken by Professor U.R. Anandamurthy when he was president as part of National Translation Mission to promote Indian literatures by translation into major world languages. The idea was to work with literary and cultural bodies of mainly European countries to persuade them to identify iconic Indian works from different national literatures to be translated into French, German, Italian, Spanish, Russian, Chinese, etc. Facilitation of negotiating publishers' rights would be done by the organization. 15 years into its existence, the organization is hardly functional owing to various administrative and policy reasons as government priorities change from time to time. If a major business house in the country takes up this initiative, allocating enough funds and professionals, this would work out very well, paving the way for Indian literature to reach major European reading communities. Similar initiatives in other major Asian countries, if not already existing, will gradually ensure the reach of Asian literatures all over the world. I think I would mention here of my experience of the initiative of the South Korean government and some major corporate bodies like the Chung-hee Park Foundation, POSCO, despite the dubious image their company has in India. My experience in South Korea begins with the 2008 POSCO Asian Forum Asia's Literature. This is the title of a conference in May-June 2008. Writers from all over Asia and other parts of the world were invited to make presentations based on our own personal experiences. What we as writers experience within our own country, its internal scenarios, poverty, environment issues, the self, family, love, etc. We were welcome to share what we most intensely experienced, including our agonies, with many of Asia's writers, as well as Korea's writers and readers who loved literature. The theme was Asia from Extinction to Formation, the Internal Scenery in Urban Growth Era, of course, based on one's own experiences. Apart from us, the specially invited delegates, there were also writers who were the members of the residency participating in the conference. Writers from Colombia, Mexico, Tunisia, Iraq, Palestine, South Africa, and others. We, the special invitees, were delegates from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, China, Taiwan, Japan, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, Mongolia, and the Philippines. Sharing our experiences in sessions of 2 days, they extended long dinners in the evening, along with tours of the harbor city of Pohang, brought us all together. I could make friends and through fractions while backing others' experiences as well. Presence of publishers from many of these countries, especially the Filipinos, added a special significance to the idea of sharing Asian literature. This was my first tryst with Asian literature in a large sense. Till then, I had helped organize and participated in international seminars organized by Sahitya Akademi in New Delhi on topics of shared heritage like the Ramayana and Mahabharata traditions, and met and exchanged views with scholars from the USA, Japan, Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, Korea, and the Sarc countries. But here, on this occasion, entire Asia was represented with observers from far corners of the globe. South Korea had definitely shown the way as to how a private player could plan something on this scale to bring Asian writers and literature together. Now I'm going to talk about the Literature Translation Institute of Korea. It is almost like the Sahitya Akademi, but operates in an entirely different way. This is a government org. It's a premier South Korean government organization. They have very many active programs to promote literature and culture of Korea abroad, and also to imbibe other cultures, in translation. So this was the institute that organized residence for writers. Just a year earlier, Anwar Ali, my friend and noted Malayalam poet, had been in residency here and had been friends with the members of the residency I had met in this conference, especially writers from Colombia, Mexico, Tunisia, Palestine. So these were Anwar's friends and I good friends as well. This institute was formally launched in 1996 by the government of South Korea for the promotion of Korean literature and culture around the world. Lti Korea, or Literature Translation Institute Korea, initiates projects to promote high-quality translation of Korean literature and their publication And to quote from their official website, I'm quoting, it's pushing forward various overseas exchange programs to strengthen the export base for Korean literature and establish a network for Korean and overseas publishers. It also works to foster professional translators to enhance the capacity of translation of Korean literature. Literature Translation Institute Korea supports various programs designed to promote awareness of Korean literature and culture abroad. Each program focuses on a specific goal dedicated to building an understanding of Korean literature policies. Every quarter, the Institute selects and supports translations of various Korean works of fiction, poetry, non-fiction, children's and young adults books, genre fiction, and graphic novels. Each application is judged for the quality of the translation and the work. From 2014, the Institute does not support the complete translation of the original work. It initially provides grant for translation of the sample and grant.
So there is some network problems. It seems there is some network problem now for last 10 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you now?
Yes.
Tell me when it is fine. Yeah.
Yeah. Just
So
you can.
the literature. Yeah. So the Literature Translation Institute Korea does not support the complete translation of the original work. It initially provides a grant for the translation of the sample, and the grant for the remainder of the work will be provided after the translator and the author sign a publication contract with an international publisher. I'm going into the details to show for any of the listeners to set up something similar. How, because I know this, I have been there for 3 different occasions, and I know how it works. It's so perfect. South Koreans are simply amazing. The residency programs I have mentioned had begun as early as 2001. Ever since, they have been inviting writers and translators from around the world, presenting Korean literature to them, and taking literatures from other Asian countries through translation, which leads me to my second visit to South Korea. Publication grants are offered to foreign publishers who have acquired copyrights to works that were translated with the support of the Institute. Since 2014, the Institute provides book translation and publication grants for foreign publishers who have published translated Korean works. These are all very significant. This is very, very, very potent. How really serious these people are.
So say there is some network problem.
Yeah. Okay.
You can just move the position little.
How is it now?
Yeah. We are able to hear now.
Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Is it clear? Can I go?
Yes,
on?
sir.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah. In an effort to build a strong network between the translators, writers, and people engaged in the publishing business, both inside and outside Korea, of literature, the Institute holds and participates in various cultural events. The Institute was held with the Korea Forum, led by the Institute, were held in the US, France, Spain, China, Germany, and Japan, and other countries. Another significant event hosted by the Institute is a Seoul International Writers Festival, which is held once every other year, involving prominent writers from all over the globe, including winners of international prizes. I had taken part in 2008. The Institute has organized translation academies in English, French, German, Spanish, Chinese, Japanese, and Russian. Apart from nurturing prospective translators, the Institute encourages new and existing translators by awarding them with Korean Literature Translation Awards. Another form of effort to promote the exchange of literature is the Institute's International Workshop on Translation and Publication of Korean Literature. Through the establishment and implementation of the Institute's Korea medium and long-term strategy, its information services provide comprehensive information regarding Korean literature and publications in overseas publishing markets. By creating relevant content in keeping with the new media environment, information services ensures that the Institute information services are integrated and up to date. The Lti Korea Library, opened in 2007, is the first library in Korea which contains collections of Korean books translated into various languages and published overseas. We visited in 2008, and it was taken aback. The kind of collection in Korean books translated into different world languages. Copies of each such books were there on display, and you're just amazed the way Korean literature was going around the world. You see, Asian literature, the Korean literature, Korea is part of Asia. This is how Asian literature should go after. This is the model, how to work to attain that goal is this. Yeah, I'll just skip that and not too many details, but I'll come to the second visit of mine to Korea, to Seoul. In fact, it was this seal of the involved writers and office bearers in the different branches of South Korean Cultural Ministry that planned up the next program I took part in Seoul in 2011. I had the honor of being invited to suggest other participants from the Sarc region by my friend Kim Nambil, the veteran Korean novelist who was actually heading the said event, involving study of indigenous narratives, more specifically epics, in which the general topic of myths and folk tales of India, I presented a paper on the folk narrative traditions of Kerala and carried copies of relevant books in English translation and gifted them to the organizers. The delegates of this conference who made significant presentations, like Professor Jamil Ahmed from Bangladesh, Mr. Tulsi Diwasa from Nepal, myself, and delegates from Uzbekistan, Mongolia, Japan, the Philippines, Laos, Vietnam, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, and Thailand, were all made honorary fellows of the Department of Culture, Government of South Korea, for 3 years from 2011. This was such a meaningful exchange that all of us got to know about important folk narratives in each other's literatures. Promotion of Asian folklore at this level was happening right before our eyes. By now, I could see how Kim Namil and his team had established contacts with almost all Asian literary centers of importance, and also roped in support from the West, especially from South Korean expatriates in the USA and other Western countries. An instance in that of Dr. Seung Hee Jeon, a friend of mine, heading the Korean Center in Harvard, who is also the guiding spirit behind the Asia magazine, which is a quarterly that represents literature from all over Asia. I had been a regular contributor to this magazine. In 2013, I did a cover story on Delhi, my memoirs of the city, as part of a series Kim Namil was carrying in Asia magazine, covering major Asian cities. The last time I was invited to South Korea was to participate in the literary and cultural festival attached to the Paju Buksori, or Paju Book Festival, conducted in Paju Book City in 2013. Paju Book City is a unique city devoted solely to book publishing, with only publishing houses, bookstalls, and presses lining its streets. Laid out in a unique design, this city is outside Seoul, closer to Incheon. Publishers and booksellers from around the globe come and take part in the festival. The bulk of the books are Korean and also from other Far Eastern Asian countries. As part of the cultural fest, my poem, Being, had been set to music, sung and danced upon in the Gangnam style of Korea. Asian literature is promoted in a major way in Paju Book Story every year. The next event I am going to mention is Asia Pacific Writers Symposia. So my Korea sojourn is over. It's about how I visited Perth in Sydney, Western Australia, and then in Hong Kong. I'll come to the Western Australia part first. The next event I'm going to mention is Asia Pacific Writers Symposia, which are biennial events involving writers from the Asia and Pacific Rim nations. The first one I attended was held in the University of Western Australia, Perth, in 2011. Literally, the entire Asia and Pacific regions were represented, with delegates from all the South Asian and Southeast Asian countries, Ukraine, the Gulf countries, South Africa, Arizona, USA, and certainly the whole of Australia. It was a 3-day affair with presentations by all delegates. Literary exchanges and promotion of literature from one's own country took precedence over everything else, although personal friendships among writers bloomed. I brought out a special section in Indian literature carrying the poems all the poets who participated in the Word Symposium. The next time we met was in Hong Kong in 2013, with almost all the same participants as before, but with more focus on Hong Kong, Macau, Singapore, Indonesia, Malaysia, Japan, the Philippines, and India. This event happens regularly every 2 years, bringing together writers and their works, going a long way in the promotion of literature from Asia. The next experience I would like to share with you is the Educational Writers International Conference organized by Mahasarakham University, Thailand at Pattaya, 2012, in which I made a presentation on value education of school children and how literature can be of assistance in this. Here too, I met delegates from all over the world who are interested to learn how we use literary texts in classrooms to instill ethical values in school children. The same year, 2012, saw me taking part in the International Folklore Congress at Kathmandu, Nepal. As I had specialized in Kerala folk literature for my senior fellowship at the Culture Department, Government of India, and had made a presentation a few years previously in a Sarc conference on folklore in New Delhi, this was an invaluable literary exchange for me. I met and renewed my connections with a number of Nepali folklorists and writers who had attended the Delhi conference. The next major initiative I'm going to mention is Sarc Literature Center, headed by the celebrated Punjabi fiction writer and poet Ajit Kaur for the last 25 years. It is a unique forum for the writers and publishers from the Sarc region to get together and exchange views. I've been a member of their core committee for conducting their literary festivals and Sufi, Bhakti, and Buddhist festivals every year for the last couple of years. Having been deeply involved with the writers of the region and their works through these events, I can see how Asian literature is advancing and celebrating the shared heritage of the region. The database of the writers and publishers from all these festivals and conferences are invaluable in the promotion of Asian literature. At this stage, I have to make mention of a body called Indian Novels Collective, headed by Ashwini Kumar, poet and professor of political science in Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai, and his wife, noted fiction writer Shinjini Kumar, who are engaged in the task of aggregating major novels from Indian literatures in English translation, making them ready to be presented to the world. The role of literary journals in promoting Asian literature and preserving the archives for the future is of utmost importance. Indian literature, the National Literary Journal of India and published by Sahitya Akademi, has seen 63 years of uninterrupted publication, and its archives over the last 62 years is available on JSTOR for the reference of universities, academics, and literature professionals from all around the world. I was its editor, and until a few days ago, its guest editor, the designation by which I was known as I had taken up editing the journal on contract basis the last 4.5 years. Indian literature publishes in English translation from the 24 national literatures and the many minority literatures of India: poetry, short fiction, drama, literary criticism, biography and autobiography, travelogue, medieval literature, tribal literature, folk literature, and works of adolescent writers. My predecessor, Nirmal Gandhi Bhattacharya, and I have together compiled and edited Best of Indian Literature, a 2-book, 4-volume, 1,700 pages, hardbound and crown size, which contains literally the best published material in my journal, Indian Literature, from its inception in 1957 to 2007. Even now, these tomes have great demand as they serve in promoting Indian literature in being an indescribable treasure trove. Next to be mentioned is the Little magazine edited by Antita Dev Sen, which used to publish from major literatures of Asia and give an award for a writer of eminence from the Asian continent. Muse India is a website that has wide reach, carrying all genres of literature from India. Of late, there is a very significant website, The Beacon, edited by Ashok Upadhyay, that is doing serious work in taking Indian literatures in English translation and also Asian literatures around the globe. Of course, there are a number of websites and hard print magazines and journals in the different literatures of India and other Asian countries, which reach their respective literatures across the globe. The one single factor that determines the reach of Asian literatures throughout the world is what I began this talk with: competent translations into English. We remember how Gabriel Garcia Marquez became what he became through the translation of his novel 100 Years of Solitude into English by Gregory Rabasa. Marquez even admitted that the English translation was better than his Spanish original, though maybe in a hyperbolical sense. But the fact remains that only competent English translations can take our regional language literatures of Asia onto an international arena, if not through French, Italian, Spanish, German, Russian, and Arabic translations. The more the merrier, of course. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing your thoughts on today's topic about your journey. It was truly insightful. And I extend heartfelt thanks to you on behalf of Asian Literary Society, its members, Journal of Asian Art, Culture and Literature, and all the editorial team members for this session. We are truly honored and humbled. Thank you to all our audience also. I hope you definitely like this thing, and definitely sir is reachable to us if you have any query and if any idea about promoting Asian art, culture and literature. You can contact us, and sir, definitely. Thank you to all of you.
Thank you, Manoj. Thank you once again for this excellent platform. So you're doing a lot of good work. I can see as I got to know from your initial description of the tasks, the things that you have done over the last 1 year. Congratulations.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.